As soon as Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever were eliminated from playoff contention, Alyssa Thomas, Connecticut's star player, did something few expected. Instead of addressing her own performance, she stepped up to the mic and launched into an attack against Indiana Fever fans. In all my 11 years of playing, I've never experienced the racial comments I've heard from the Indiana fan base, Thomas declared during her post-game press conference. And just like that, the WNBA was embroiled in a new controversy, one that has massive implications for both Thomas and the league. Yes, you heard that right. Alyssa Thomas has been suspended following a racially charged incident involving Caitlin Clark, and the fallout is sending shockwaves through the sports world. After a less than stellar performance against the Minnesota Lynx in the playoffs, it seems like Thomas couldn't handle the pressure. Rather than owning up to her lackluster play, she turned the spotlight on Caitlin Clark's fans, accusing them of being racist.
In my 11-year career, I've never experienced the racial comments from the Indiana Fever fan base. We had her face on a serious matter that happened in this world, and it's unacceptable, honestly. And there's no place for it, and we've been professional throughout the whole entire thing, but I've never been called the things that I've been called on social media, and there's no place for it.
Alyssa Thomas's accusations, fact or deflection. Thomas's remarks have ignited fierce debates, with some defending her right to speak out about racism and others accusing her of using this sensitive topic to dodge responsibility for her poor showing on the court. But what's the real story here? Did Alyssa Thomas genuinely experience racial abuse from fans, or was this an attempt to shift the narrative away from her team's playoff exit? Let's start by addressing the key accusation. According to Thomas, the Indiana Fever fan base has made racially charged comments, and she felt it was time to speak up. But here's the issue. Thomas provided no specific examples of what was said. There were no social media posts, no audio recordings, and no incidents during the game that could substantiate her claims. Instead, she issued a sweeping statement, accusing an entire fan base of racism. This move has left many questioning her motives. Was this a spur-of-the-moment emotional response after a tough loss? Or was it a calculated attempt to shift the focus away from her subpar playoff performance, the rise of Caitlin Clark and her fan base? To understand why Thomas's comments have gained so much traction, you have to understand the rise of Caitlin Clark. Over the past year, Clark has quickly become the face of the WNBA's next generation. Her style of play is electrifying. She's known for her pinpoint shooting, lightning-fast movements, and ability to command the floor. Fans adore her, and her games consistently draw high ratings. But with this level of popularity comes intense scrutiny. Clark's rise has not been without controversy, especially among players who feel that her stardom overshadows their own achievements. In many ways, Clark represents a new era in the WNBA, one where young, dynamic players are poised to dominate the league for years to come. It's easy to see why someone like Alyssa Thomas, a seasoned veteran, might feel overlooked. And that brings us to the heart of this issue. Thomas's comments weren't just about the fans. They were about Clark herself. By accusing Clark's supporters of being racist, Thomas has indirectly targeted Clark as well. It's almost as if she's suggesting that Clark's popularity is built on more than just talent, perhaps even implying that Clark's race plays a role in her widespread appeal, the broader context of racism in sports. Before we delve deeper into Thomas's specific accusations, it's important to acknowledge the broader context of racism in sports. Professional athletes, particularly athletes of color, have long faced racial abuse from fans. Whether it's soccer players being subjected to racist chants or basketball players receiving hate-filled messages on social media, racism remains a pervasive issue in the world of sports. In fact, the WNBA has been vocal in its support for social justice causes. Players regularly speak out about racial inequality, and the league has often aligned itself with movements like Black Lives Matter. However, accusations like the ones Alyssa Thomas has made are particularly damaging because they cast a shadow over an entire fan base and league. Racism in sports is a very real issue, but the question remains, was Alyssa Thomas using this issue to deflect criticism from her own performance? The social media backlash.
Clark got the last laugh, though, since the Fever got the ball back as a result of Thomas' aggressive play. While the Sun star was complaining to the referees about the call, cameras panned to Clark sticking her tongue out in response to the play, with the video going viral on social media.
Once Alyssa Thomas made her accusations, social media exploded. Fans of Caitlin Clark were quick to defend their favorite player, with many arguing that Thomas's comments were unfair and unsubstantiated. Hashtags supporting Clark began trending, and sports commentators weighed in on the growing controversy. On the flip side, Thomas also had her defenders. Many pointed out that players of color often face unique challenges in dealing with fan criticism, and that Thomas was within her rights to call out the behavior she found problematic. However, even those who supported Thomas's stance were left questioning the timing of her comments. Could this all have been handled differently? Absolutely. By issuing such broad accusations without evidence, Thomas has put herself in a difficult position. Not only has she alienated a large portion of the WNBA fan base, but she's also invited further scrutiny into her own actions. Alyssa Thomas's career in context. Alyssa Thomas is no stranger to the limelight. As one of the Connecticut Sun's standout players, she has built a reputation as a tough, no-nonsense competitor. Her physical style of play has made her a dominant force on the court, and she's widely respected for her leadership and work ethic. Over her 11-year career, Thomas has become a key figure in the WNBA, known for her defensive prowess and ability to impact the game on both ends of the floor. But in recent years, Thomas has faced challenges. Injuries have slowed her down, and her performances in high-stakes games have been inconsistent. The pressure to perform is immense, especially for a veteran player like Thomas, who is expected to lead her team to success. In this context, it's possible that the frustrations of the playoffs and the weight of expectations played a role in her outburst. After all, athletes are human and emotions run high, especially after a tough loss. But was this the right way to handle that frustration? That's the question on everyone's mind. A history of on-court tensions between Clark and Thomas. This isn't the first time Alyssa Thomas and Caitlin Clark have been at the center of controversy. Earlier this season, during a heated matchup between the Indiana Fever and the Connecticut Sun, Thomas set what can only be described as one of the hardest screens in recent memory on Clark. The impact sent Clark crashing to the floor, leaving fans gasping in shock. Many thought Clark had seriously injured herself, and the incident quickly became the talk of the league. The referees called an offensive foul on Thomas, but took no further action. No flagrant foul, no ejection, just a routine call. Fans of Caitlin Clark were furious, and many took to social media to express their anger at both the referees and Thomas herself. This moment added fuel to the fire of an already simmering rivalry between the two players. Thomas's aggressive play style clashed with Clark's quick and flashy game, creating a perfect storm for future confrontations. In many ways, the accusations of racism made by Thomas seem like a continuation of this on-court tension. The role of media in shaping narratives. One of the most interesting aspects of this entire saga is the way the media has covered it. From sports shows like ESPN's The Jump to online blogs and podcasts, everyone seems to have an opinion on the Alyssa Thomas versus Caitlin Clark controversy. But how much of this narrative has been shaped by the media itself? It's important to recognize that the media plays a crucial role in shaping how we perceive athletes. In this case, Alyssa Thomas's comments were quickly picked up and amplified, creating a whirlwind of coverage that overshadowed her actual performance on the court. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark's calm and composed response, or lack of response, has made her appear as the more mature figure in this situation. But media narratives can be tricky. While some outlets have been quick to defend Clark and criticize Thomas, others have taken a more nuanced approach, acknowledging the real issue of racism in sports, while questioning Thomas's timing and lack of evidence. The result is a complicated and messy story, one that has no easy answers. Alyssa Thomas, the fallout and long-term consequences. Alyssa Thomas's suspension is undoubtedly a huge blow to her career. As one of the Connecticut Sun's key players, her absence will be felt by her team, especially as they continue to push for playoff success. But beyond the immediate impact on the Suns' performance, what are the long-term consequences for Thomas herself? First and foremost, this incident has put a spotlight on Thomas in a way she likely didn't anticipate. For a player who has spent over a decade in the league, building a reputation as a hard-nosed competitor, this controversy may overshadow all of her past accomplishments. Fans and analysts alike are now questioning her judgment and decision-making both on and off the court. The accusation of playing the race card in such a high-profile way has alienated many fans, and it's unclear whether she'll be able to recover from the damage to her reputation. Another long-term consequence could be how this affects Thomas's relationships with her teammates and coaches. Professional athletes rely on trust and camaraderie to function as a cohesive unit. When a player becomes the center of a controversy as explosive as this, it can disrupt the locker room dynamic. Will her teammates stand by her, or will they feel that her actions have cast a negative light on the entire organization? The suspension also raises questions about Thomas's future in the league. While the WNBA has shown a willingness to stand behind its players on social justice issues, this particular situation is murky. Thomas's comments, lacking clear evidence, have cast a shadow over the league's ability to manage its players' use of public platforms. Will the league continue to support Thomas, or could this suspension be the beginning of the end for her WNBA career? WNBA's response: navigating a public relations nightmare. Speaking of the league, how does the WNBA navigate this complex situation? The league has long positioned itself as a leader in social justice advocacy, encouraging players to speak out on issues of racial injustice and inequality. The WNBA also faces a challenge in managing its relationship with fans. Accusations like Thomas's have the potential to alienate large sections of the fan base, particularly those who feel unfairly labeled as racist simply for supporting a particular player or team. The league needs to find a way to address these concerns while continuing to foster an inclusive and respectful environment for all. And then there's the media. The way this controversy has been covered by the press has added fuel to the fire, with different outlets taking vastly different stances on the issue. The WNBA must be careful in how it communicates its own stance, ensuring that it doesn't come across as taking sides in a way that could deepen divisions among fans and players. In short, the WNBA is walking a tightrope. How it handles the Alyssa Thomas suspension will have lasting implications for the league's image, its players, and its relationship with fans. Alyssa Thomas is not the first athlete to face scrutiny for how they handle accusations of racism or controversial statements. In fact, the history of professional sports is filled with similar incidents, and examining these can provide some insight into how Thomas might navigate this storm, or how the fallout could continue to escalate. One such example is the case of Colin Kaepernick, the former NFL quarterback who famously knelt during the national anthem to protest racial injustice. Kaepernick's protest sparked a national debate, and while he became a symbol of resistance to racial inequality, he was also heavily criticized, even losing his place in the NFL. The parallels to Alyssa Thomas are clear. Both players used their platforms to address issues of race, and both faced significant backlash. However, the key difference is that Kaepernick had a clear message and a specific action, kneeling, whereas Thomas's accusations lack that same clarity and evidence. Another example comes from European soccer, where players of color regularly face racist abuse from fans. Teams and leagues have taken varying approaches to addressing this issue, from banning fans who engage in racist behavior to implementing campaigns aimed at promoting equality. These cases illustrate the importance of having a clear, consistent response to allegations of racism, a lesson the WNBA might take to heart as it navigates the fallout from the Thomas Clark controversy. The key takeaway from these other controversies is that how an athlete handles the backlash is just as important as the controversy itself. If Alyssa Thomas hopes to recover from this incident, she will need to take steps to clarify her statements, provide context, and engage in meaningful dialogue with both fans and her fellow players. The role of social media in amplifying sports controversies. In today's world, social media plays an enormous role in shaping the narrative around athletes and sports controversies. In the case of Alyssa Thomas, social media acted as the accelerant that turned her post-game comments into a full-blown scandal. Within hours of her accusations, Twitter, Instagram, and sports forums were ablaze with opinions on both sides of the issue. One of the most significant aspects of this controversy is how quickly it escalated online. Thomas's comments spread like wildfire, with fans of Caitlin Clark taking to social media to defend their player and express outrage at being labeled racist. Hashtags supporting both Thomas and Clark began trending, and the debate raged on across various platforms. The speed and scale of the social media response demonstrate just how powerful these platforms can be in amplifying controversies. But social media also adds complexity to these situations. Unlike traditional media, where stories are reported and then digested over time, social media allows for real-time reactions that are often fueled by emotion rather than facts. In Thomas's case, the lack of evidence backing up her claims didn't stop her supporters from rallying behind her. At the same time, critics were quick to condemn her, often without fully understanding the nuances of the situation. Athletes today must be more mindful than ever of how their words will be interpreted and amplified online. For Alyssa Thomas, the power of social media has been a double-edged sword. It's given her a platform to speak out, but it has also intensified the backlash against her. What's next for Caitlin Clark? Amidst all the chaos, one person has remained relatively silent: Caitlin Clark. As the focal point of Alyssa Thomas's accusations, Clark has been thrust into a controversy that she didn't ask for. Yet true to form, Clark has kept her head down, refusing to engage in the drama. Clark's response, or lack thereof, has only endeared her more to her fans. By staying out of the fray, she has demonstrated maturity and professionalism, qualities that will serve her well as she continues her career. While Alyssa Thomas is embroiled in controversy, Clark remains focused on her game, a move that has only heightened her reputation as one of the WNBA's brightest stars. However, Clark is not completely untouched by this scandal. The accusations of racism against her fan base have created tension, and it's possible that Clark will eventually need to address the issue. Whether she chooses to do so in a public statement or in a more subtle way remains to be seen. But for now, Clark's strategy of staying quiet appears to be working in her favor. The Alyssa Thomas suspension is more than just a personal controversy. It's a defining moment for the WNBA as a whole. How the league handles this situation will set the tone for how it addresses similar issues in the future. Will it support players like Thomas in speaking out against racism, even when the accusations are vague? Or will it prioritize the integrity of the league by holding players accountable for unsubstantiated claims? For Alyssa Thomas, the road ahead is uncertain. Her suspension is a wake-up call, and how she responds in the coming weeks will determine her future in the WNBA. Will she take responsibility for her comments, or will she continue to deflect attention away from her actions on the court? As for Caitlin Clark, her star continues to rise. Despite the controversy swirling around her, Clark has managed to stay above the fray, focusing on what she does best, playing basketball. In the end, it's Clark's ability to remain composed and professional that will likely cement her as the face of the WNBA for years to come. In a league that prides itself on social justice and equality, the Alyssa Thomas controversy serves as a reminder that even the most well-intentioned actions can have unintended consequences. For fans, players, and the league itself, this moment will be remembered as a turning point, one that will shape the future of the WNBA for better or for worse.